Hey Waffle Gang, I do hope you're well. My name is Mark and today we're checking out some more Reddit stories, and if you do love a Reddit story, please consider hitting a like, a subscribe, and maybe that notification bell too. Hugely helps out the channel, approaching 100k here. And let's crack on with today's first story. Much love, guys. Today's first story comes from Jesus Tunafish, who says, my 28 female boyfriend, 29 male, and his best friend, 29 female, are going on a week-long vacation. They uninvited me. My boyfriend wanted to go on vacation this summer to his mum's friend's house in Hawaii with me and his two best friends, 25 male and 29 female. We've been planning on this all spring, and at some point, 25 male dropped out of the trip, leaving just the three of us. For context, my boyfriend and I have been going out since November, and it's been serious. We had and still have been talking about moving in together, and he has said, and I agree, that this is a long-term situation and that we're in it for good. In early June, once 25 male unexpectedly dropped out the trip, 29 female called my boyfriend and told him that now it's just the three of us. She didn't feel comfortable going with me on the trip, since she didn't know me that well and she didn't want to be a third wheel. She said that if I were to go, she wouldn't go on the trip. Without telling me that this was happening, they changed the plans and made it a trip just the two of them. They changed the location to a beach in Costa Rica. I was trying to figure out when to ask for time off this summer and hadn't heard news about the plans. So I asked my boyfriend which week in August I should be setting aside for the Hawaii trip. He let me know that actually he talked to his friend and that she didn't want to go if I were going, so he was going to go alone with her to Costa Rica. He said that we could go another week later, maybe to Mexico City or something. I was upset and tried to talk with him about how the situation made me feel, especially since this wasn't a case of a separate trip being set up ahead of time. This was a case of me being invited and then uninvited from a week-long tropical vacation with a girlfriend of his who I'd never met before. We eventually decided to do a trip together to Copenhagen, which we both wanted to visit, as some sort of compensation. I also asked to meet her, so that I could feel more comfortable with the trip. We spent the 4th of July going to see her and her boyfriend in the city where they live. And although it was nice to put a face to a name, it was ultimately a very cold trip and she was not at all welcoming to me. My boyfriend remarked on how unfriendly she was to both of us. He thought and said that he was surprised that she didn't act warmly to me. I went out of my way to try to get to know her and her boyfriend. I'm very outgoing and friendly, and usually this would be easy, but it didn't really click. Even after several days, they were somewhat cold to each other as well. They bickered a little bit about their future and his own 3-week trip without her that was scheduled for the same time as their trip. This had been scheduled before ours had. This had been my effort to feel better about the trip, so I told my boyfriend that I didn't feel comfortable with things and that I was feeling insulted by the way it was handled. I tried to make things smooth between all of us, and I asked him to please come up with something that could help me feel better about the trip. On a visit to his family, they asked about the trip and they were all shocked that he would have arranged it this way, and let me know that they would have been furious if they were in my position, which triggered a fight in which I asked him to please come up with a strategy to make me feel better and more secure about them going together without me. He said that he would never do this kind of thing again, which feels like not much to offer, since this is a kind of once-in-a-lifetime trip to begin with. He kinda offered to not go on the trip, but he had already paid for the tickets and made arrangements, and I didn't want to stop their trip and be resented by both him and his best friend. He asked me to give him ideas on how to make me feel better and wanted me to just tell him what to do, and stalled until it was finally the day of the trip. He bought me a bag of peanut butter cups and I drove the two of them to the airport. I feel so disregarded and disrespected in this situation. I want to break up with him, but I don't want to burn up something that has otherwise been really good. Holy moly, and we do have an update in a second, but the level of disrespect in this post is absolute madness. So she basically gave him an ultimatum: either you, his girlfriend, who you consider that you'd like have a real serious relationship with, or his best friend who seems to have something against you. I'm not sure if it's jealousy, whether she's trying to get with him or not. I suspect it is, but even though she herself has a boyfriend, and then without telling you that all this was happening, they changed plans to just the two of them, and we're still expecting you to drive them to the airport and all this kind of shit. And the part that makes me think, she's into your boyfriend is that when you went to go and visit them, she was cold to her boyfriend as well, and they were bickering about their future. But absolutely, like you said at the very end of this, that you feel disregarded and disrespected in the situation, and you want to break up with him. And I think if I was in your position and this happened to me, this would be a deal breaker for me, absolutely. Your second best in this relationship to his best friend, who I think fancies him. But Peachy Rose says, as someone who in my own previous relationship was pushed aside for the lifelong best friend, ditch this loser. I, 24 female, spent far too long in this relationship where I was put on hold to accommodate my ex's 25 male best friend, 25 female. In his words, she did not care to meet a girl he was dating unless he was planning to marry her. So that meant for 3 years, when she came around for Christmas, I wasn't allowed at his house or included in his family activities. He'd go silent for days around planned visits with her. My pleas to at least meet her, to put a face to her name and try to make a good impression with her, were scoffed at and ignored. He found the time and funds to travel abroad to spend time with her in a different country for a week, but couldn't find the time to make a beach trip with me for a single day. 2-hour round-trip travel. Your story reminded me so much of my own. I just want to tell you that there are decent guys out there, guys who keep an open line of communication, who want to travel with you and want to treat you with respect. That isn't this guy. Hell, I'd use the time he's gone to get your belongings out, or if you own the place, get his belongings into a storage unit. He wants to surprise you by disinviting you to the trip, staying for a week at a foreign destination with his best friend. You can surprise him with breaking up and working towards finding someone who genuinely respects you and knows how to treat you with some common decency. Makeup and Justice says, I had a similar experience a few years back. In my case, unbeknownst to me, my boyfriend had made it public knowledge to his friends that he wasn't as serious about me as I was about him, while dropping hints to me that he wanted to move in together. He booked a trip. A female friend of his ended up planning to join him, and he didn't tell me until a couple of days before he left. I also found her very cold to me and wondered if something was going on, as she had just broken up with her boyfriend. It turns out she was cold to me because she saw me as temporary, so not worth getting to know. I'm sure this is also why she thought it was okay to schedule a trip alone with him. Long story short, maybe your partner is not as serious about the two of you as he's leading you to believe. Either way, this is a huge red flag, and you'll thank yourself down the line if you end things with him. Don't ever take someone back who would disrespect you like this. You will hate this kind of disregard with someone in a long-term relationship. This is who he is. Too bad he could not wait to be alone with you on a beach. I don't care how much he begs and pleads, even if he does, stay strong. Personally, I think he will break up with you when he gets back. This may have been his plan all along. Lucy Cat says, if you were my close friend, I would say you should dump him and not be around when he gets back. No explanation needed. Leave a Dear John note or text him on the last day of the trip and then block him. That is crazy disrespectful, and I don't know why you'd want to date someone who would make plans with another woman who is interested in him. He's not worth it, I promise. Go out there and find someone who deserves you. And one more from Sexy, who says, I have a female best friend who I go on trips with and everything, and I would never in a million years go on a trip with her alone without my girlfriend. Even knowing that there is no chance that I would cheat on my girlfriend with her, it would be completely disrespectful to my girlfriend to cut her out, and I can only imagine how it would make her feel. That whole situation is wrong, and to me sounds like they wanted you out the picture so they could bang. Sure, that might not be the case, but either way, those are some huge red flags. So then OP updated the post, which says update as promised. I was really upset the day I dropped him off, and he was texting me but I wasn't responding. I wasn't sure what I wanted to do, but I didn't want to do anything at all in the state I was in. I waited until the next day and then sent him a thought out text letting him know that I didn't feel safe or loved in the way the trip was handled, and that would be dropping his things off at his place and leaving his keys with a neighbor. He called but didn't leave any messages, and then he messaged me that he didn't understand. The rest of the week he called and messaged me, but I couldn't bring myself to pick up or text back. On Thursday, I think that he realized that I was serious, and he asked me some questions about logistical things. I told him which neighbor his key was with, etc. When he got back and saw all his things at his place, he got pretty frantic and called and left me a long message. I was working all day, but also I didn't want to respond. He asked me to explain because he didn't understand what was going on. The next day I sent another text making it clear that it was over. He got upset and sent a bunch of texts in a row about how he didn't understand why I was throwing away everything that we had built. He left me a voicemail that was really angry and that said he had no idea why I was upset and that he did not accept the breakup because he had no say in it, and that he wanted me to tell him the evil story that I'd made up about him to his face. I wasn't going to respond to him, and I wanted to remain calm, but this upset me. So I sat down to write him this letter. It's long, so skip over it if you want. I tried to call him, but I started crying and told him I'd just send him an email instead. This is what it said. The time that we've had apart has given me some good space and time to think. I've had a chance to think about the things that are important for me in a relationship, and I see that we should not be together. I'm sorry that I've been asking for you to change things about your life that you shouldn't have to change at my or anyone's behest. From the very start, this trip was made in an insanely disrespectful way, in which it started out from you being given an ultimatum by your female best friend, who I had never met, that either she goes or I go on this trip, and you picked her. You didn't offer to have her meet me. Theoretically, I was your long-term partner, so this would have made a lot of sense. You didn't encourage her to find someone else to come, and you didn't consult me at all. That's enough for most people to have a deal breaker right there. However, I stayed. This is a person you have a history with that is not entirely clear to me. Here is what I understand. Some bad rumors got started about the two of you, in which you spent an entire night out with her on an acid trip while you were dating someone else. Nothing happened. The other thing I understand is that you were interested in her romantically at some, theoretically, other point, that she started dating her boyfriend, and that closed the door on things for you. According to what I also understand, it took a long time for 29 female's boyfriend to feel comfortable with you being around. But you apparently worked to ultimately make him feel comfortable with you after I'm not sure how long. This is a completely unknown person who shut me out of a trip that I was originally going to go on. Unilateral decision. You did not tell me this was happening until I asked when the trip to Hawaii would be. You purchased tickets in another very disrespectful situation in which I have cooked dinner and have had guests present, and you chose to go into my room for well over an hour to select tickets with her, and in which I repeatedly asked you to please come to dinner because you say it will be just a few more minutes each time. There is absolutely no reason for doing it at that time and in that situation, seeing how she is in the same time zone as us and has a 9-to-5 job. This makes me feel sick to my stomach. So, to make me feel better about this whole arrangement, I tell you that I want to meet this person. On my request, we arrange a trip to go meet her and her boyfriend. A brief trip in which they are, and you explicitly agree, inexplicably cold. The first conversation that we have is one in which 29 female and her boyfriend argue about how she DM'd him while he was already in a relationship and got him to date her instead. You tell me about conversations that 29 female has had with you recently in which it seems implied that there is some real instability in their long-term relationship. Stuff about kids and dogs. I have a discussion in which I let you know that I see that and it worries me. Meanwhile, I'm still wanting all of this to work out for you and for me and for her. I, at this point, am planning on being with you for the long term and see no benefit in telling you not to go on this trip with your best friend. I want it to work out. But each and every interaction surrounding this trip chips away at my ability to handle it. The conversations that seem to go nowhere, etc. Your dad, your mum, and your grandparents are all very surprised when we tell them about this trip. It is becoming very obvious that this is a dangerous trip to make with the fragility of our relationship. 29 male, we've been together for 9 months. How long did it take before 29 female's boyfriend was comfortable with you hanging around? Much less going on a one-on-one international tropical vacation, in which he was uninvited because of your request. We go over it with friend at the rock climbing gym. We go over it in the car. We go over it while we're booking our Airbnb for Copenhagen. We go over it while I tell you that I still feel uncomfortable and I do not feel good about the trip. Talk about repeatedly saying something. Although I asked for you to help me, you actually asked me instead to come up with what would make me feel better. Surprisingly, I have no ideas either. Ultimately, it appears that the original plan to meet at my place and hang out and do a game night before you two go on the trip has been cancelled. And 29 female will be staying at my place, but not hanging out with us at all beforehand. You attribute it to you not bringing it up with her early enough. This is apparently not something that was discussed even 2 nights before the trip. This upsets me. You do not know what to do. I don't blame you at this point, it was well out of hand. I don't know what to do either. There is no good solution that I can think of besides waiting for the trip to be over. I tell you that either I have to get over it or I have to break up with you, and that I don't want to break up with you, but my ability to get over it is rather worn down. She arrives at my place very late, and we wake up the next morning for me to take the 2 of you to the airport. After all this lead up, I know you can tell how unhappy I am. I fully, absolutely know how unhappy I am. You leave, and when I don't respond to your text messages, you text me to tell me that I hope that I'm okay and you're going to bed. No call. The rest of the week was rough. My text you was met with essentially, I'm sorry you feel this way. You tell me that I'm being unfair. There is no acknowledgement, and there still has been none, that this trip to a fucking honeymoon destination, as we have discussed before, could be a crazy and horrible thing to go through with, even with my quasi-blessing. This is not something that people in relationships have to deal with. This is not something that people in relationships do. Besides 29 female, I guess. In the end, all of this is to say that I have felt serious emotional needs go seriously unmet in a way that is a deal breaker for me. There have been some wonderful, very positive times, but there has been an unnecessary amount of heartache and suffering for me over things that come down to what I can only assume are personal differences. I cannot handle your relationship with 29 female. I suppose I could ask you to pick between her and me, but that's not what I want to do. I want you to have your best friend, and I want to leave. I did love you, but I'm not about to fight this fight and hear you tell me that I'm crazy for not seeing how totally platonic everything is for the rest of my life. It seems like trying to convince someone to like different food or to have a different favorite color. I'm not happy in this, and I don't want to feel these feelings any longer. There is no need for this to be mutual. I do not need your permission to break up with you. He wrote me back an apologetic email in which he accepted responsibility for most things without any argument, except he denied anything that had to do with his relationship with her making me feel uncomfortable, and he denied that I would not be able to handle their relationship. He said that the only thing that made their trip bad for me was my own perspective. I wrote him back that trust has to be built, and he put too much strain early on a relationship in which had not developed that trust. He agreed and apologized. For me, it ended on a pretty amicable note, but this style of relationship really doesn't work for me. I don't feel like his responses to me really healed or changed anything significantly. I stand by my decision at this point. Oh, and there's one thing I have to quote on this one towards the end there, where he said that the only thing that made their trip bad for me was my own perspective. Not the fact that, he snuck around behind your back to rearrange this trip to begin with, to totally cut you out of it. His girlfriend didn't talk to you about it at all, being met with, I'm sorry you feel this way, and that you're making up some sort of evil story in your head, not acknowledging, it's fucking bizarre what he was doing to begin with. But what do you guys make of this one? Do you think there was ever a chance of this relationship being fixed? What would you do in the original part of the story? Say you was in OP's position and, you was basically kicked out of this vacation so he could go away with his best friend on this trip. And it was all in secret as well. Let me know your thoughts down in the comments below. Just a huge thank you from the bottom of my heart for getting involved in today's stories. Your love, support, and time always means the absolute world to me, so thank you so much for getting involved. Absolutely crazy. And if you'd like a different format to listen to, go to mark-narrations.com and select your favorite podcast there, or it's on Spotify, Apple, all the good stuff, or Acast. Find your favorite one there. Just a huge thank you again, and hopefully I will see you in the next one. Take care, guys, and much love.
Wake up, get up, stretch my legs, eat some breakfast, milk and eggs, brush my teeth up, wash my face, throw my clothes on, start my day. Wake up, I can smell the smoke from the bacon. Let's go, see the sun shining from the windows. Okay, I know that today'll be a good day. Okay, I know that today'll be a good day. A, B, C, 1, 2, 3. Drink some water, brush my teeth, get out of bed and I stretch.